So that's your warning.
Stop what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, just we're recording as of right now, so people
Okay.
start jumping on. All right.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Hello, everyone. Just got to get the screen.
Recording in progress.
Okay, testing. Seeing the screen fine? Yes.
Mm-hmm. I am. I am.
Hello to everyone who's joined us so far. You are having a little peek behind the curtains here as we're getting ready for today's presentation. So please just hang tight. If you are hearing us okay, feel free to drop a note and say hello in the chat box or the questions box. And we'll be giving you a little bit more notice and some instructions shortly. So thank you for joining us. There we go. Do a quick sound check with our friends and audience here. Barbara, you can hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. I can.
And I can hear you and I can see you. Everyone else hearing us okay, say hello, and we'll be starting shortly. Just so that you know, today's session is an exclusive interactive fundraising workshop featuring Barbara O'Reilly, who is CFRE and fundraising expert with Windmill Hill Consulting. Glad to have her here. We'll be doing intros in a little bit. This is 5 fundraising myths debunked for real success in 2022. So this is going to be a pretty exciting session. We'll be starting shortly in probably just about 2 or 3 minutes here. We have a lot of people who are coming in, joining us today. It's going to be a pretty full house. A few housekeeping tips for you in the meantime. Today's session will be recorded. It'll be sent out to everyone who has registered afterwards. So if you do not necessarily need to feel that you should take notes, but feel free to if you wish. So whatever your preference there. And we have on the Zoom session the ability for you to chat with us. Just drop a note in the chat if you have comments, questions. This is very interactive. You'll be hearing more about that. And if you have a question, go ahead and answer that in the questions box. If you just go ahead and put that in there. It'll be out there for everyone to see. If you want to do it anonymously, you have that option to choose that as well. But we're among friends here, so feel free to participate in that respect. And we'll be starting again shortly. So I'm going to put myself on mute for just a moment. Okay, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. I just want to make sure my mic. We're going to go ahead and get started here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do an intro in a moment here so that we can get a good clean recording to send out to you. But first off, I want to let you know you're in the right place if you are here for 5 fundraising myths debunked for real success in 2022, our exclusive interactive fundraising workshop. If that's not where you intended to be, I encourage you to stick around. This is going to be a very worthwhile, very helpful webinar, particularly in these times for the road ahead. So look forward to having a great session with you. You do have the ability to put comments throughout in the chat box. I encourage you to do that now just to let us know you can hear and see us okay. I guess that's a little bit of a moot point. If you can't hear us, you can't hear me saying this, but we'll drop a note in the chat box as well. And we are going to be taking questions throughout wherever possible. We'll have a big session at the end where we do as much of Q&A and more myth debunking as possible. So enter that in the questions box, but either way we'll find you will be able to answer those questions. It's going to be very interactive. So with that, I'm going to take just a quick pause, then you'll hear me do an intro and we'll get started. Welcome everyone to today's exclusive interactive fundraising workshop, 5 fundraising myths debunked for real success in 2022. Thank you for joining us for this Arreva educational webinar. We're going to go ahead and just let you know a little bit about what is in store today in a real kind of overview fashion here. First off, we are going to be doing some welcome and introductions. I'll let you know, right off the bat here, since I'm talking, my name is David Jost. I am the Chief Marketing Officer with Arreva. More importantly, today, I am the moderator and co-panelist with our guest today, and we'll be doing some more introductions in just a moment. We also want to hear from you. And in today's session, in a general sense, here's what we'll be covering. We're going to be talking about 5 common fundraising myths. We're going to debunk those. And then we're going to be interjecting the straight story on fundraising trends and best practices for real success in 2022. We're going to be looking at some essential software solutions to really help you achieve that real fundraising success. And then at the end and throughout, wherever possible, we're going to have opportunity for questions and answers. And we will be having more debunking. I put that there just because it's fun to say. So let's keep moving. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our very esteemed host here, and I just am going to very visibly look for my notes here because it is a great background here, and I did not have it set there right now. But this is Barbara O'Reilly. Barbara is CFRE, and she's the principal and founder of Windmill Hill Consulting. She has nearly 30 years of annual fund, major gifts, campaign fundraising experience at major nonprofit organizations, including Harvard University, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, Oxford University in England, and the American Red Cross. And her consulting firm that we just shared, Windmill Hill Consulting, helps nonprofit organizations of all sizes cut through the noise and develop, and the myths, I should say, and develop a profitable fundraising strategy that focuses on the resources, skills, and tactics they need to build more effective donor relationships and catapult their revenue. She serves as the immediate past president of AFP, Washington, D.C. Metro Chapter, and as a former member of the advisory panel for Regare. I get that right about 50% of the times I introduce you, so I hope I got it right.
You got it right.
All right, and the fundraising, which is the fundraising think tank in the UK, which I probably don't belong to based on my pronunciation, but she is a frequent guest presenter at national and international conferences. She's been a friend and partner with Arreva and on many of our webinars if you've attended before, and they've been across the spectrum of a lot of the great things happening out in our community. She earned her CFRE accreditation in 2015 and became an AFP master trainer in 2018. Barbara, welcome and thank you for joining us. If you wanted to give us a little bit of just an intro and a few words about today's session, I would love that.
Yeah, thanks, David. I'm really thrilled to be back co-presenting with you and sort of dropping some truth bombs today about myths that really pervade our sector. And you know, over the 30 years or so that I've been fundraising, and especially over the last, say, 13 years that I've had my consulting practice, I've heard a lot of things that really just simply were not true about fundraising. And so these are five of the ones that seem to be pervasive. They seem to be coming up over and over again that we just have to break and dispel. So I'm super excited to be able to have this conversation with you today.
Well, you know, I think that's great. We're really looking forward to this. You know, perception of reality is a pretty common sort of dilemma and a question out there. There's far more than 5 myths floating around. We're going to be talking a little bit about that in just a moment, but that's a start, right?
Yeah.
We want to hear from you today. This is very interactive. What I mean is there's going to be a lot of talking and, you know, us chatting back and forth, but we're here with our team at Arreva as well, monitoring, and we're going to be seeing your comments, your questions. We're going to be trying to interject those and have this be very responsive as we go through today's sessions. So we want you to share your questions, your insights, your comments, myths that you would like to really get to the bottom of and see whether it's a myth or not. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So I do encourage you right now, if you'd just like to flex your muscles a bit and say hello in the chat box or in the question box, whichever one works best for you. And then we're just going to go ahead and get started. Myths and unicorns today. This is really just what, really myths are you curious about? What possible fundraising myths? You heard something, you're not sure if it's true or not, and you just want to submit that. So just submit it in the question box or the chat box. Either way, we'll find it. And we're going to be coming back to those, and we'll certainly interject and address those as they come up. But please do go ahead and have a little bit of fun and let us know if there's a myth that you've heard. So we have some that we're going to be teeing up to you. I'm going to let you go ahead and do that. There's not actually a poll coming up, so I'll remind you again, because this is where it's really going to get interesting. We'll be going through today's session, and at the end, we're going to have a debunking session. There, I said it again. So let's take a look at 5 common fundraising myths.
All right, so myth number 1, most donations come from foundations and corporations, right? How often do we hear in our organizations, from our boards, from our CEOs, we just need to get more foundation grants, or we need to get more corporate money? This is definitely a myth, because you'll see that according to the Giving USA reports, which are released every June, so the next one will be coming out, I think mid-June this year. It sort of breaks down the total contributions across the nation, and this number I've been watching, it has been increasing over the last, I don't know, probably 10 years. This is an all-time record, 471 billion that was contributed in 2020. And you might think, well, that's not a surprise because that's, it was COVID, it was a contentious political environment.
Yeah.
We had the overdue calls for social justice. But what's super surprising here, or not surprising to me, but for most people when I share this, is the bulk of these contributions are coming from individuals.
Yeah.
So we've got 69% from individuals themselves, bequests, of course, from individuals. And then of that foundation number, generally about half are coming from family foundations, which again, they're coming from individuals or families. So this right here is often what I use with organizations to dispel this myth, to say, stop focusing on corporations, stop focusing only on foundations, look at who your individuals are who are giving, because they are generally the biggest donors, the biggest segment of donors in the country.
Barbara, I'm curious, and I don't know if you know the exact answer to this, but having seen this over the years, has this mix changed much?
Not much, no. And so the percentage of individuals has probably decreased a little bit by a couple percentage points. Corporations has definitely decreased by about a single percentage point from 2018, in fact. And that's not surprising because when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act went into effect, corporations really no longer were incentivized to make charitable contributions. So I'll be curious to watch that number and how it might decrease or not. Foundations is sort of, maybe this has come down a little bit, but again, but consistently, individuals has been more than 50% of this pie for quite some time.
It's interesting. I look at this and see individuals and corporations, and automatically my mind goes to matching giving and the role that plays. I'm assuming those are in their own slice of the pie, but just interesting to see how they sort of work in tandem, or synergy to really be able to drive a greater yield for the organizations.
Yeah, for sure. And also this just underscores the importance of thinking about plan giving. And really having those conversations with your individual donors about leaving a legacy gift at some point. So, we've been hearing about the great wealth transfer for probably the last 7 to 10 years. And this is very much where we're going to see massive amounts of income and wealth transferring truly from one generation to the next. So this is that number might go up if we continue to have more of those conversations with our individual donors.
Yeah, very important. So we're going to go ahead. We've already got one myth out of the way here. I'm going to remind you again, because I'm not seeing tons of them going here. I know you have your myths. Maybe you don't know their myths. How about you tell me some of the things that you think are true, and we'll try and debunk them. But we'll determine whether it's a myth or possibly a myth. Let's be polite, but go ahead and contribute there. Maybe we'll even do a little drawing for a free coffee gift card at the end out of all the submissions. So, to encourage everyone who might need that little jolt. So we're on to myth number 2, Barbara.
Everyone might be your donor if only they knew about you. Now, I will confess, when I was in-house, I was definitely guilty of this myth. As I looked at my portfolio of donors, as I was talking with potential corporate supporters and thinking, if only they knew more about X program or Y initiative or whatever countries or states or cities the programs were in, that they would definitely want to give. And this one, I would say we've got to dispel this by saying we've got to remove the if only and should from our vocabulary, because donors are not giving because they hear about something or that they should give. They are giving. Actually, maybe we can ask, well, I was going to say we can ask our attendees.
I got rid of it. Hold on. If anyone saw all of those, Barbara, they're very fast and they deserve to have the cheat sheet.
Yes.
But yes, for those of you who didn't, go ahead.
I would love to see what people think. What's the top driver for donors to make giving decisions? What is most important to them when they make a gift? You can just put it in the chat, what you think is a top driver. Okay, believe in the organization, connection to the mission, values, belief in the mission, connection to the cause. Yep.
It's all about the cause and the mission, what you do, right? Where
Passion.
you make an impact.
Yeah, it
Okay.
relates to them. Values match beliefs. Yep. Okay. Shall we show the chart? Yes.
Perfect.
You all are, yep, you are all are absolutely right. So belief in the mission and the belief that this gift can make a difference are two of the top consistent drivers for donors making their giving decisions. I've seen this this is from US Trust study of high net worth philanthropy. So they were surveying their high net worth clients, private wealth clients, but I've seen this with lots of other studies that were done of just polling donors of all levels. And that sense of connection to the cause, this is personally important to them. They believe in this mission. They believe that this organization that they're supporting is best positioned to solve that problem. They believe that their gift, no matter the amount, is going to make a difference. We see here tax benefit. And the were asked, those are these are low on our on this poll, and again, same pretty consistent results in other surveys. Because we know that, you know, donors are they're connecting with their own personal values. So if somebody asks them, and I really grappled with that last one, that we're asked is only 3%, because it feels a little bit out of line with how we know of, you know, how donors and volunteers and boards engage and how we as staff engage with our donor audiences. But the reality is that donors already have made their decisions that they're going to be philanthropic. That's something that happens internally to them, and they're already going to be thinking about making that gift. So if they might just make that gift without being asked. It is more the driver for that mission and the impact, and we've seen this for sure. It ramp up in 2020. There was no donor fatigue. And so donors were no longer thinking of if only either or decisions. It was both and. So they were giving to COVID or social justice or political causes and the missions and the organizations that were important to them. So this is important for us to remember. Donors are giving to things that are important to them, not because our programs are so great, which I'm sure they are. They are giving for personal reasons, and we've got to honor that and let that lead our strategies.
Yeah, and we're asked is a pretty complex piece too, right? So it's about we're asked, and then there's qualifiers in the right way, you know, with the right frequency, a bunch of things that we'll talk more about. So I love this next slide because I just feel smart looking at it. So I'm going to go ahead and click ahead to that one. It's all about science. So here we go.
Okay. So I like to call this this is a brain scan, and I like to call this that the bigger scan, the one that says VTA on it, the bigger image is your brain, and on the right, that sort of inset is your brain on philanthropy. This is from some studies that was done that they were looking at the neuroscience behind giving, and what they found is that the parts of this brain, so you see in that little inset, there are parts that are sort of firing up more than on just your brain and philanthropy. It's firing off the reward parts of our brain. So when somebody's thinking about volunteering, when they're thinking about a gift that they've made, it fires off the reward centers, and it releases those hormones that are released when we are with family, when we are with loved ones, when we're doing something that we really like, when we're eating that piece of chocolate cake that's super delicious. So we have to remember then that it is really about building a relationship. It is not transactional to the donor. So we think the previous slide was talking about these deeper drivers of impact and wanting to make a difference in a personal connection. We've got the neuroscience now that shows physically things change in us when we are doing things that are going to create the sense of a community, a bonding act with the organization. And so we know now that not just from lots of surveys that have been done about donor drivers, but from the science that it is much it's an act of creating a relationship. And so when we don't steward our donors well, when we aren't thinking about them beyond just that online gift or that check or that stock gift or whatever, crypto gift, we lose that opportunity to build on what the donor is saying. I want to have a relationship with your organization in whatever way makes the most sense. And so we've really got to be reminding ourselves that this is important.
Great. So why do donors stop giving?
So I feel like we need more than one slide, but there are a whole lot of reasons. They weren't asked. The ask wasn't compelling. They weren't thanked. They were solicited too frequently or for too much. They weren't effective. They had personal changes. There are changes in here that are within the sort of the donor and within the organization's control. I'm curious to know what other reasons people think donors don't stop giving.
Yeah, feel free to share those in the chat. We're getting a few of the myths and or quote unquote truths coming in as well. It's kind of interesting as you're doing that, if you have something to share. I think what's kind of important is this is all from the perspective, largely from the perspective of the donor. They pack their bag, they're downtrodden right here. Yep. But we're not thanked. And I know that naturally we want to say, well, of course we thank them, right? But it's about, do they remember being thanked? Were they thanked in the way they want to be thanked? There's a lot of qualifiers on all of these things, including the ask and a number of these. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, Barbara.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole notion of thanking is, I think, one of the biggest areas of growth and opportunity that we need to address in the sector. I know we're going to talk about it in a couple slides about the retention rates, but we lose perspectives in thinking that all that we need to do is just write a thank you note. Then that's what stewardship is. And the reality is that donors, like all of us, we're all hardwired to know. We're all hardwired to know how things end, right? So that's why cliffhangers are such an important storytelling device, because we want to know how do things end. So when somebody makes a gift, what was one of the top reasons why they make that gift? They want to make a difference. And if we don't tell them their gift made a difference, they probably aren't going to give again. Yeah. So it isn't less about on behalf of the board of directors, thank you for your gift of whatever. It's more connecting them, making them, reinforcing that they made the right decision investing in your organization because you're going to do this, or you're going to have that kind of result. And then going back and circling back and saying, yeah, we did what we said we were going to do, or we did make a difference because of donors like you. And this is not about donor sort of putting it all back on the donor, saying how wonderful they are. They are awesome because they're giving, but this is collectively that power of partnership in giving the funds to have results.
So we have a couple of folks that have contributed, and I think it's worth just sharing. Someone put here, they've stopped because their income level changed, right? Or retirement, right? There are economic reasons, and they could be temporary, they could be kind of sustained things. Their charity rating is low, meaning too much money spent on admin, not the mission of the charity, which kind of goes to the organization wasn't effective. Could deal with some things there, but those are some things to keep in mind. And I want to throw one out to you just for your reaction to this, Barbara. Someone here had shared that they have the problem that in the past, the stewardship was very poor, and they have this capitalized, trying to recover from this now. There's a lag, right? I mean, it stays with you for a while.
Always. And research I've seen shows that if donors are lapsed by probably 2 or 3 years, the percentage of likelihood of reactivating them or recapturing them, if you would, is pretty low. It's in the single-digit percentage. So, it doesn't mean that you don't try to reactivate and kind of re-engage them, but just manage your expectations that if they haven't supported you in 2-3 years' time, the likelihood that you'll get them back is probably pretty low. Now, we did see some during COVID, during the first year of COVID, we did see some donors, some longer lapsed donors kind of coming back, which was surprising. Not significant numbers, but noticeable enough for if you were watching those trend lines. So I think there's potential. It's a matter of then knowing from your segments who are the ones who might be likely to make those gifts again. And it just underscores the importance that if you have poor stewardship practices and you finally get a staff or a strategy in place that is going to really make that more consistent, it's almost sometimes like you're rebuilding, because those donors have gone to some other organization that's going to sort of better value them.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of different things happening. People got, I think even the enticement of a coffee gift card got people going here. So we got a lot of great contributions. One, I'm just going to answer because it's come up a couple of times. Yes, you will receive a full slide deck and a recording. Okay, so you receive a PDF of that. But so stay tuned here. Somebody just commented that tribute gifts are only one-time gifts, and I would say that's not necessarily so. You could certainly, if you've set it up where this could be a recurring gift that continues to be in honor of or in memory of, or you could create personal fundraisers and things. But certainly, and if you are not finding a way to communicate and thank and connect people to the cause, I would just interject that. Do you have thoughts on that particular comment?
Yeah, I think that's, I agree with you. It's not necessarily the case, but it depends on the kind of tribute. So if it's a memorial gift, I have seen that those tend to be really more just one-time gifts if they're not from family members. So, part of the stewardship, you still want to make sure you've got, whether they're honorary or memorial gifts, you do want to still ask them questions. What inspired you to support our organization? How would you like to stay connected to us? What other information could we share with you that would be of interest to show you more about our work and the impact your gift is having? So, still keep those, ask those questions to get to know them, because that's the other thing, that we don't, donors stop giving because we're only ever talking at them. We're not talking with them. And so I think having those opportunities, especially for tribute gifts, to dig in a little bit more, to understand how that gift was so meaningful for whatever the purpose was, and sharing in that way, I think that's going to be important.
Well, I think also, we've seen organizations that have done personal fundraisers. I alluded to that for a bit, right? So let's say that for your organization, there's someone that is very important to honor and talk about their memory and what they meant to your organization and what your organization meant to them. Launching a personal fundraiser, peer-to-peer fundraising, if you will, that allows other people to be able to give, and to have this also really just shine on that person and be able to show how much the impact that they made was able to do, to really be able to do in terms of contributing to some great fundraising towards the mission as well. So some good stuff there.
For sure. And especially for peer-to-peer, we just have to remember that we need to keep those communication lines open. So that person's giving because somebody that they know has launched a fundraiser, a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. That person will make a gift. It kind of goes out of their mind then, right? They move on with their life. If they don't hear anything back from the organization, again, they're going to completely forget that they made that gift. And so, making sure you steward not only the person who's done the peer-to-peer campaign, but also all of their supporters. You want to make sure that you are balancing both of those donor audiences.
So we had someone ask about donor fatigue, and then there's also the piece out there that donors aren't, this is sort of within this one, donors aren't really giving. People are just really not, it's not a good time to be asking whatever. But there's a question here that you posed that there's an answer to, because I know there's a big white space here, but are people really giving?
So we should have had the sixth myth, which is that donor fatigue is a myth, because it actually is a myth. Yeah. So people are giving. Now we definitely saw this. In the early days, I vividly remember those first few months of COVID. The nonprofit sector was sort of split. There were nonprofits that froze because we were all trying to figure out what was going on, and we didn't, there was lots of things that were happening in terms of moving to remote working environments, trying to keep operations going, not wanting to bother our donors. Our donors were saying, "Wait, we want to do something. We want to give more." And so, the reality is that those donors from that previous slide, they stepped up and they continue to give. So even 2021 numbers are showing increased contributions. But as a whole, individual giving is still stuck at 2% of the GDP. It's been like this probably for 20 years. So is that the best barometer for measuring generosity within the country? I'm actually not sure anymore, but it's an important data point. What is worrying, though, is that the number of donors and volunteers is declining. It's been on a steady decline for the last 10 years or so. So while we get all excited about those numbers, the contributed dollars, we have to pay attention to the fact that the number of donors is actually declining. The number of volunteers is actually declining. Mega gifts is what's getting everyone distracted, saying, wow, we've got these incredible gifts that are coming in, but we're forgetting those smaller to mid-sized donors. So there's this, this dichotomy. We get all excited about the revenue records, but underneath the surface, the things that are going to sustain those revenue growth over time for the whole nonprofit sector is starting to see some attrition. And then we've got market fluctuations, economic conditions, political conditions, social conditions, and those are all going to affect donors to some degree, for sure. And we just want to be mindful of it. But these other pieces about the number of donors who are declining and the levels that they're, we as organizational leaders, we don't want to just keep focused on those large donors, because they are, where's the next future large donors? They're going to come from your smaller to mid-level donors, and we have to remember that.
Well, and I see that we're talking about economic conditions and market fluctuations and different factors here. I mean, these are some things that kind of come up that tell you about the state of things, but they're not necessarily a fixed or a set in stone kind of thing either. So when you look at economic conditions, there's pretty significant evidence on the impact of being able to communicate and those who ask and being able to put things out there, whether it's during I'll say the R word, recession, or during situations where there are troubling times like we've been through for the past couple of years. I think those are important things to think about as well. And then to look at some of these things to see where are the opportunities.
For sure. And actually, with your point about economic conditions, and market fluctuations, what we know is that those lower to mid-level donors generally are less affected by fluctuations in the market. That tends to affect more the giving decisions by high net worth individuals, certainly by corporations and some foundations to a degree. So, by paying attention to what's going on in the economy, we want to remember and think about who are those segments of our audience that are less going to be driven by those changes. And it is our smaller to mid-level donors. And if we're not paying attention to them, they're going away and we may not get them back.
So I'm gonna let you know as we switch, we had a flurry of people that have come on. So everyone's scrambling to get on. Don't panic if you just joined us. We're gonna be sharing a recording out afterwards. And for those of you who asked again, we will get that to you within a short amount of time once this is all done. So just stay tuned and engage. Keep letting us know about myths or truths that you would like to have us put through our myth or not machine, if you will, and we'll keep talking about that. So we're on to the next piece of sort of debunking the myth that we were just speaking of.
Yeah, so we've talked about this first one, that the giving results hit a new record in 2020. The 2021 numbers will be out in June, and early estimations from other trend trackings that I've seen are expecting that giving will increase. Some have said by about 3%. So it'll be really interesting to see what that number actually is and how that pie chart will break down. But there's nothing that's indicating that it will be decreasing, because certainly the needs will continue to be great in 2021 as well as 2020. But what's also very interesting is how people were giving and Giving Tuesday. So you remember in 2020, we had Giving Tuesday Now, and then we had Giving Tuesday in November. It's crossed the 2 billion mark. So in 2021, it was at 2.7 billion, which was up 9% from the year before. So this is, and it's only been around for less than 20 years. I think it's even 10 years, 10, 15 years. So, it's interesting because I have not been a fan of Giving Tuesday. It's a great vehicle, but I have not been a fan of it for the simple reason that everybody gets focused on thinking this is the way we have to raise money. But then it becomes such a noisy day and such sometimes wasted opportunity for very little return, right? So when there are so many other things that fundraising staff could be doing throughout the year to be raising more money. I am now a little bit more agnostic about it. I do understand and appreciate that giving days generally are important and are really good when they're leveraged correctly. I would say that Giving Tuesday, if you have a bigger staff, if you have even a mid-sized staff, you might consider it, but don't put all your eggs in that basket. So, and frankly, what we're seeing in some analysis of Giving Tuesday results, donors who make gifts on Giving Tuesday are generally already supportive of the organizations that they're giving through that day. So it's usually just a reminder that they've got to make their year-end gift. But you got what you do for those sort of 10 months before Giving Tuesday really matters. So it isn't just start putting out a bunch of social posts and hope that the money starts rolling in. It is, you've got to build an intentional calendar from January to October to early November to set up a strong Giving Tuesday campaign.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, because I just think of, giving as an event, right? So you're thinking about a Giving Tuesday, there's something everyone's sort of centered around, their giving days. We've seen people have great success with 8 days of giving or team fundraising campaigns, things that sort of center around that. So it is really a year-round, kind of conversation, and making sure that you're top of mind through your communications and through opportunities. So this next slide we've talked about on every session we've been on, Barbara, because it's fundamental. It's at the foundation of everything. But here is that leaky bucket again.
Yep, for sure. And I think I have a version of this slide in everything I present on, and probably everything I write about. This is a problem, and this donor retention is getting worse. It has, in fact, decreased by about 7 percentage points, I think, and from 2020 to 2021. So, this is on average. This is broad sector average. So on average, most organizations are losing about 60% of their donors. So stop and think about that for a second. This is a kind of churn that would never be acceptable in the business world, in the for-profit side. So, and in fact, when I talk to for-profit colleagues, their eyes widen and they think, how on earth is that possible, right? Anything lower than 90%, bells are going off and alarms are sounding, and, the red lights are flashing. So we've got to get a handle on this, because that's a lot of churn and first-time donors. So think about all those first-time supporters who made gifts in 2020 and 2021 because of all the unusual things that were going on. 80% of them on average will not come back. Again, when we think about list acquisition, list growth, file size growth, if we aren't keeping our first-time donors, we're going to be constantly in this endless cycle of churn, which is just, it can't be sustainable for fundraisers who have got a million different things, are pulled in 45 different directions. And how do you build a sustainable and scalable fundraising program if you're constantly going through a revolving door of donors?
So a question just came up. What's an optimum retention rate organizations should establish as a goal, other than better than it was, right? So, right, constant, never-ending improvement.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say objective number one is to get a handle on what your own organizational retention rates have been. Many organizations don't think to do this, don't know how to do this, and I would say that most CRMs will be able to calculate this for you and do a few years analysis to understand how many donors have you been keeping year over year, how many first-time donors as well have you been keeping year over year. So objective number one is get a handle on what those numbers are. To answer this question, though, I would say generally you want as high as possible. So, I have worked with organizations that have had 60 to 70%, even 80% retention. And I've had organizations that were in the 20% retention rate for their average. And first-time donor retention, 9% was one client. So, you want to definitely be able to keep as many donors as you can, because ultimately, if they're giving year over year, multiple gifts, over subsequent years, they will, if stewarded correctly, they are the likeliest ones to increase their giving, to become perhaps those legacy gifts, those legacy donors, to perhaps become your large gift donors over time. So I would say definitely think about, just get a handle on those numbers and start to build your plan for growing those numbers over, in increments. Maybe you could try to increase it by 2% over the next year, or 5%, but it's going to take time for sure.
Yeah. So trends we're seeing when it comes to donor retention.
Yeah, so the total amount is increasing. The number of donors is decreasing. Again, this is where I was mentioning before about that mid-level gifts. So what's interesting is that the smaller level, what they call the smaller level donors, anybody under 500, so that could be kind of your right at your mid-level threshold and below, they shrank. This is more recent trends. They have been shrinking since 2018 for sure. In fact, almost disappearing, but more specifically from 2021 to 2020. New donors who were giving 500 and above were more likely to be retained than reactivated donors, which I found really interesting because, clearly if they're giving a first-time gift of 500 or more, that's showing some pretty strong interest, right? So that's not a throwaway gift. That isn't something that they're just doing on a spur. They're doing it because they see that amount as something that can have an impact. So that's important. Those who have lapsed, to that earlier point about, trying to rebuild, that organization is trying to rebuild their stewardship plan, those reactivated donors, they may not be expecting to be stewarded well again, or stewarded at all. And so that's where we really want to make sure we're building a consistent communication stream so that we don't have any of those donors who just lose interest because they don't know if their gift ever made a difference.
Okay, great. So we're going to, just move here to this next slide to kind of finish up this debunking.
Yeah, so we always talk about, when we think about donor communications, these are the things we want to talk about. And this comes from my colleagues over in the UK at Blue Frog, which is a really brilliant consulting company. And they do a lot of work in donor communications. And I just love this image because they talk about, in our minds, we're always thinking, we got to talk about this. We've got to tell them about that. We've got to tell them all these great things that we've been doing. But donors actually want to hear, they want a two-way conversation. They want to be seen. They want to be valued. They want you to understand why they made a decision to support you, or why they're interested in your cause to begin with, how their gift is going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. So these are the things. So that's why donor surveys are so powerful. That's why asking questions after the gifts have been made. How is your donor experience like? Their donation experience like? How often can we contact you? We would love to just provide a brief update on how your gift has impacted in helping our work. May we call you? May we email you? Those sorts of things are really important for donors, and we just need to flip the script a bit and remember that's what that's going to be more important for donors.
So this is almost like 11 more myths. Every one of these is a myth about what they want to hear. So we've got our numbers to resort here, but we're onward. So that is a great slide. A lot of people commenting on that. I agree. And this is what they really want to know here is how we, how we help solve a problem, right? So on to myth number 3.
So digital and social media are most effective and all you need. Now, I'm going to say that I started in fundraising when there was no digital and social media. We didn't even have email, and I'm going to date myself now, but we didn't have email. I remember when Netscape was the search engine we could use. So, but with this, the sort of rapid rise of digital for sure, and social media over the last, say, 5 years, 6 years, everybody has sort of focused on that, but stop and think about just how hyper connected we are now. This is a snapshot. This number changes every single year. I love getting this image because it just is sobering to see how much happens in one internet minute. 19 million texts are sent. Where's the emails? Or 194,000 people are tweeting. 190 million emails are sent. That right there is the reason why you shouldn't have your donor communication strategy resting solely digitally, because is getting stuck in the noise. And it's so much easier to do a mass select and delete than try to get through all of our emails. So we have to remember that a strong donor communications strategy is multi-channel. It is not one channel only.
So the bottom line here is 0 inbox or 0 chat box or 0 message box is completely unachievable, but keep trying.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So, you know, a snapshot of what we saw in terms of this slide as well.
Yeah, so while I've just said donor communication strategies need to be multi-channel, what we are seeing very interestingly is that online giving is definitely here to stay. It grew by anywhere between 21 and 30%, whichever report you read, in 2020. And you might think, well, yeah, of course, because we were all stuck at home and we were all stuck on our devices. But that was the largest increase since over the last 10 years. So interestingly, it's still not, it's still not the predominant giving vehicle, and it for a long time, it was keeping on pace with the retail industry, with e-commerce and online purchases. So it's interesting that it jumped quite significantly. I'm curious to see if it will maintain those levels, sort of well past the pandemic. But Facebook, they crossed the 6 billion threshold for Facebook fundraisers. This is absolutely a preferred way of people, supporting and promoting and doing something for the charities that are important to them. Also, DAFs. We've been talking about DAFs, and I remember, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Chronicle Philanthropy had a whole piece about, a whole sort of guide about how to understand donor advised funds. There are 1 million donor advised fund holders now, and there are 34 billion in contributions. So, and in fact, interestingly, Fidelity was reporting that in 2021, I think it was 2020, 2021, they had about 28 million that was donated in crypto, which was up from, I think, like 19 million the year before. So crypto is also something to be paying attention to. It's not totally there yet. I actually call crypto like what DAFs were 10, 15 years ago. We sort of, everybody we're sort of curious about it. It's not really accessible to everybody yet, but there are 300 million crypto holders and about 21 million in the US, 300 million globally. So this is definitely something that we're going to be watching in terms of trends for the future.
Okay, so now we're going to move to that still very present mailbox full of communications.
Yeah, so direct mail is not dead. So this is actually, this should have been another myth that direct mail is dead, because it isn't. What we are seeing very consistently in a number of different surveys is that it lifts response rate. So if we are only focusing on email or some other digital means, we're going to get one percentage response rate. But if we combine that with direct mail, it will lift it by 20 to 30%. So as you see here, 28%. So we really want to be able to meet our donors where they are. And remember that previous slide about the Internet Minute. The direct mail, I do not see it invested enough in by organizations. And we know that it lasts longer, it's tactile, right? So think about even how much junk we get in our mailboxes now. And especially in the early days of the pandemic, those organizations that continued to snail mail to their donors raised more money because it was getting some attention. It was getting more attention than all the digital stuff.
Great. So on to myth number 4, nonprofits must focus on younger audiences.
Right, and I hear this all the time, and you all probably are hearing this as well. That nonprofits, we just need more younger donors. And the reality is that, yes, you do, but you got to pay attention to all the other ones. The younger donors they are not necessarily going to be your large gift donors yet. But they are, and your Gen Zs and millennials, they're looking at engagement from not just being able to make gifts, but also how else can they be involved. Volunteerism is really important. And I would say, I would actually credit the millennials with changing the way employee and workforce and employee giving happens. They walked into the workforce demanding and expecting that they would have opportunities to volunteer. So, that's not necessarily the same emphasis with Gen X or baby boomers or traditionalists, the greatest generation, but millennials, Gen Zs, they're going to be the ones that, while they may not be able to give large amounts yet, they're going to be your social promoters. They're going to be the ones who are kind of active on all the digital platforms that we were just talking about in the previous section. So keep those, use them as your champions and your social advocates. Gen X's baby boomers right now, majority of the money that's being given is coming from baby boomers and soon to follow by Gen X. So, and of course, your greatest generation, those are the ones that are just, for all of the reasons they've accumulated their wealth and their income over time. But we want to pay attention to not just keeping sight on the younger donors, because these other donors these other older groups is where we're seeing the revenue coming from.
Well, I love that you said that not just piece as well. We had a comment, like, don't you really need to reach out in all directions generationally? Of course, yes, you certainly do. And in fact, it's good to understand where you're doing well as an organization and having that meaningful data, so you can kind of see where things are at, because the strategy is going to be different, not just based on the demographics, but based on a number of other factors. So it all plays into segmentation. So I think that's a very useful point. And in fact, this is only taking you to millennials. There's Gen Z after this. And as it comes up, things continue to shift, because just inevitably, one of these will fall off of the slide at some point, right?
Sure.
So that's the best way to put that.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, another myth is that millennials and Gen Zs will only want to be communicated with digitally. Well, what we're seeing is they actually do like to receive direct mail. So again, thinking about those channel preferences, let's ask those donors, regardless of their age, how do they want to hear from you? And make sure that we're not just pre-assuming that because of their age, they're only going to prefer one channel.
Yeah, we're good. We're getting some good questions here. I want to remind everyone, please share with us your myths. As you can see, we'll take more. There's going to be a lot of things within the myths and things that you may not even know if they're myths. They've just heard them forever. What are the things you always hear and you've never really validated that? You've never been able to go check that out. We'd love to take that on if we get a chance in the questions, but we're going to do a little bit of a level set here and kind of look at the myths so far. So if you want to just give us a little bit of a summary one by one on these with the debunk point.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, myth number one, most donations come from corporations and foundations. No, we see this pretty consistently, that individuals are giving the biggest piece of the pie. Myth number two is that everyone could be a donor to you if they only knew about you. And the reality is that donors are going to give to the organizations that personally resonate with them. So let's not think that if only we told more people about our work, that they'll give to us because they, or they should give to us. Let's take those words out of our vernacular, because donors are going to give where it's most important to them.
So reach the people who count, don't count the people you reach.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
exactly.
look at that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, digital and social, most effective and all you need. Multi-channel is absolutely the way to go. We've got to meet our donors where they are. And then nonprofits must focus on younger audiences. No, not necessarily, not just on younger audiences, and not only on focusing on those younger audience. We want to make sure that we are thinking about the channel preferences, the ways that they can be involved and still contribute meaningfully depending on where they are and their income levels and their philanthropic mindsets. Because remember too, Gen Zs and millennials, they're still learning how to be philanthropists. So, they're going to need some time to figure things out and figure out how they want to be supportive of the nonprofit sector.
It's great. So the elephant in the room here is that there are only 4 myths listed here, in addition to the other ones we put out there. So I'm going to take you a little bit through myth number 5. I'm going to let you know there's more myth debunking ahead. There's a little bit of information on some software, some services and things here that are tied to this, but please stick with us. I've seen so many great questions. I'm going to remind you one additional time here. Please be sure to let us know if there's something you want to know, myth or not. Make it as simple as that. Just put the statement out there. Or if you want to just have a little bit of fun, and you already know the answer, just put it out and see if we concur. So more myth debunking ahead, but first, myth number 5, which is that technology and digital fundraising will be less critical to success post-pandemic or the next phase, wherever we're at, right? And I'm just going to tell you a little bit on this, and Barbara and I are going to chat about this. I'm going to give you a little bit of perspective on some of the things that are very important to know here. But one of the best things to, like, if you look at this, there's obviously nothing great that comes out of a pandemic. It's tragic. It's been a really tough experience for us over the more than 2 years now, right? So looking at this, but one of the things that did come out of this that is interesting from the perspective of really being able to move things along is that it did serve as a catalyst for digital transformation. And I think just transformation in general. And I say that from our perspective as a technology company, but I can tell you that, speaking with clients, I've heard so many say, this really moved us to do what we should have already done. Whether it was digital, whether it was getting a good donor retention plan in place, whether it was looking at fundraising, it was a catalyst for change. So it's about evolution. And, we have quotes throughout here, which you've probably been seeing, but so we have one here. When you're talking about evolution, we went right to the source. The secondary source, not the source, but Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survives. It's the ones that are most adaptable to change. So that's not going to change, part of that, sort of play on words, but it's not going to. So, a lot of times people may be thinking, oh, thank goodness, whether it's digital fundraising or virtual or hybrid, or it's looking at ways to connect or having people remote or social or having those options, the genie's not going back in the bottle, and it shouldn't. It's really an important piece of that. So I'm going to talk to you just briefly here before we come back to our myth debunking about really it's about leveraging the right partner and technology for digital fundraising, donor relationship management, live virtual hybrid auction events for, to really have that success. And this is just a segue to give you a little bit of a review of what we do. We've had some questions. We don't really go into sales pitch. It's not who we are. We've been a trusted advisor to nonprofits for 3 decades. Before email as well. So I guess I did it myself, but the organization. And we really are proud, to be offering what is the only all-in-one cloud-based, fully integrated solution out there. I'm sorry, just an automated digital fundraising, donor relationship management, healthcare, hospitality, auction software, everything really being able to work together. And, Arreva has been serving the industry for 30 years. We work with just about every national organization out there, as well as individual chapters. So we know, a lot of different perspectives, and we built ExceedFurther on purpose, really as an all-in-one solution to be able to eliminate siloed solutions, to bring things into a unified single database so that you have meaningful insights, a 360-degree view to be able to do all of the kinds of things that Barbara's been talking about, and so many of you have been sharing as well. I'm not going to run through all of these, but you can see lots and lots of things that are part of this. The key differentiator is that they are all completely integrated, automated, come into a single unified database, and are eliminating the need to have things in multiple databases, programs, and sometimes even manila folders, desk drawers, what have you, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and skip through that. We do hospitality solutions. We work with the lion's share of the Ronald McDonald House charities globally. Everything is digitally mobile optimized. We also have part of our organization where and within our solutions, we offer auctions, bidding, and text-based solutions, again, for live, virtual, and hybrid solutions. And these are just very, very robust solutions that helped so many organizations raise so much money during the pandemic and learn some things that are making what they do now with the return of in-room auctions even better. Everything, again, digital and mobilely friendly. We help you from A to Z. We're there with auctioneers, with consulting, with virtual event managers. So a lot of companies out there doing some portion of it, but we're there to help you make sure it's successful. And I'm just going to let you know that as we go into the Q&A and the more debunking, I'm going to put 2 things out to you here as we're talking. So Barbara, you can just lead what's going on here, and I'll go ahead and let you folks know here. But we've had people talk about, like, Barbara should be working with our organization. I don't want to put that out there that's necessarily, a requirement, but I'll tell you, she certainly could. And at the very least, you could stay connected with her. So I'm going to first off, start off by giving you all a chance to just let us know if you have any interest in staying connected with Barbara. What happens if someone raises their hand here? Should they be afraid, Barbara, or is it's
no.
all good? Yeah, okay.
No, for sure. We send out at least a monthly newsletter and then a couple other announcements of webinars and conferences and other things that are coming up. And so we send out a couple pieces each month to the newsletter list. So we want to make sure that we're providing all the tools and resources for our fearless fundraising colleagues. It's just a really great way for folks to just see what's on my mind, what's on our team's mind, and if they have some needs for a sounding board. We've been fundraising for a long time, and we've been working with organizations of all sizes. So we can certainly help provide some outside perspectives to help organizations raise more money.
So great organization, Windmill Hill Consulting, and you can chat further. There's email info here. This will all be in the deck that you receive as well. I'm going to give you a count of 5 to go ahead and put your hand up here again. We'll probably offer that at the end, but if you want to stay connected with Barbara, go ahead and answer in the poll. We have a lot of people saying yes, and so the options are yes, not at this time. You can always reach out, let us know, but please go ahead and do that. And then I'm also going to go back and let you know likewise, because we've had some questions about David. You talk really fast, story of my life. And I walked through things pretty quickly, but I want to let you know that we are here. We're with our clients and the community as a whole for good. So to really help you achieve your mission. And so we also are offering a free consultation and demo to everyone who attends today or anyone who would like to. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, I'm going to tell you the same thing. We are about helping you, whether you ultimately or ever do business with us or not. We're here to help you. And it could be a full-on hour session to listen to what you're doing with your digital fundraising, your donor relationship management, donor retention, any of the things you've heard about, auctions, what have you. Or it could be a simple piece of, we're looking to do a golf fundraiser and we have some questions. We know you have expertise across all of these areas. So we're here to help you any way that we can. And it could be 5 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, it could be an hour. It's been known to be more. It's all up to you, right? And so our experts are there to work with you and help you in any way we can. And certainly to show you some of the ways, more importantly, how your peers are really having success. I have been having success, but are continuing to now. So I wanted to make sure I let you know about that. So again, this is going to stay up for just a moment as we move into the next session. There's still time for you to add, your myth or not submissions. And I'm going to run through some of the questions that have come up in no particular order other than how quickly I can get to them, Barbara. So you just sit back and share your expertise. But one of the questions that came up was, we get a lot of memorial donations. Is it fair to take these out of the formula for donor retention rates?
No. I would say it's important to know how many of those memorial gifts there are, but I would still include them. I would recommend doing 2 things. One is running your retention numbers, including them, but then also just taking them out and running them to see what it would be, and using both of those as data points. Because some of those donors who make memorial gifts might in fact continue on, but it's such a deeply personal motivation for those gifts. So you want to recognize them as part of your overall trends, but put that little asterisk of what it is, what your real trends would be pulling them out, what your other trends would be pulling them out. So you want to just have those 2 sets of data points.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to share here too. We've got our poll open here. We had someone just ask, I answered maybe on the Arreva demo. I'm interested in one, but need to get my feet a little wetter. I'm a new president for our organization. I'm thinking maybe July or August. It's fine. Answer maybe. We'll probably still just drop a note to you. And if you answer yes, and you want to just have a quick chat, someone from our team will really just sort of connect with you and see how we can help you. So to that person, I don't know if they wanted to be called out, but just tell them, please, just go ahead, answer yes the next time we put it up, or we'll just make a note and we'll reach out. And if there's a question, for example, what are the 5 best things I can do as a new president for an organization? I just played into that one right now. We can help you with that. And similarly for Barbara, if you want to reach out and you want to receive some information, take the best, lose the rest. It's kind of our motto, I think, uniformly here. I'm going to go to the next question, which is, do donors like to see you are grant seeking as well?
Yeah, so I'll answer that from the perspective of foundations, of those institutional funders. So they absolutely want to ensure that you are as diversified as you can be in your revenue. So so when you are talking to foundations or corporations, they're going to ask questions about where else you're getting your contributions from. They're going to ask about your board and how much your board is giving, or if you're getting 100% board giving. So from individual side, I don't see that as much of a factor in their decision making, but it's at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they're part of something that that is going to have results. And so if you are able then to demonstrate lots of different revenue streams that are helping you to achieve those results, I think that's going to be fine. That's that where I see that kind of come into question is more on the institutional side, because they want to understand, are you only just asking us, or are you getting gifts from other kinds of sources?
So there's got a question here that's near and dear to my heart, and I want to just interject as you answer that as well. But as we're finding younger donors doing more monthly sustainer giving, and you know what, if I am a fan of one thing more than anything else, and it's really, really tough, I love recurring giving. Yep. I think it's an answer for donor retention. I always use the analogy of myself, because I'm a little guilty about how many streaming services I subscribe to. And sometimes don't give thought to, but they're there. I kind of set it and forget it. But the reasoning that I have them out there, I subscribe to because I love the content. I support them. I want to be part of it, and I want it there. And I want to, make sure that's part of it, right? So from a recurring giving, it's a similar concept. And there is a stat out there. The stats always change a bit, but it's basically, recurring givers or monthly givers generally contribute up to 5 or 6 times as much on an annual basis as a one-time donor. Yeah. And by the way, there isn't a whole lot that's different about that person. Certainly there's differences. There's probably more likelihood. Younger donors are used to it, right? Let me just go ahead and set it up on, and get this in place. And I think that's a great fact. But putting that out in front of folks lets them have it there and spread it out. It allows them to be able to have it reminded, so that you aren't having to come back, and they may not have forgotten about you, but it just is always there to make sure they're contributing. So those are important things. I don't know if you have thoughts on, one, whether other generations are effective with monthly sustainer giving, and two, just the whole notion of younger donors doing so.
Yeah, I haven't seen any other research that kind of indicates if it is a preferred giving vehicle for any of the older generations. I'm not at all surprised at what you just shared about the younger ones. And in fact, I also am a fan of monthly giving or recurring giving, because it just allows people to make larger gifts than they would have if they had to make it on a one-time basis or on a single basis. So if you've got a giving society, for example, maybe you've got $1,000 giving society. Well, somebody wouldn't give $1,000. Maybe they don't feel comfortable giving, writing that check or making that one-time, making that credit card payment for $1,000. But, if it's $84 a month, right? Or then maybe they will do that. And so I think that's where we can encourage donors to be stretching a little bit more than they would normally with that opportunity for monthly giving. But we still have to steward them as much as we would any other donors who make, one-time gifts, or single gifts. So we really want to make sure that we are consistently, circling back and telling them, about the impact that their gift has been making. We want it, we could do a year end and do a special appeal to them. If you've got a challenge grant or something else that's unique, definitely still ask them for that additional gift. They are actually more inclined to make an additional gift when they're asked. They won't necessarily just do it on their own. So a myth is, oh, they're already making a monthly gift, we don't need to ask them anymore. Yeah, or we shouldn't ask them anymore. Yeah, they're actually the ones who will respond. So final word on recurring giving, I kind of would tie it back to, I'm going to drop a little nugget here. It's tied somewhat to ExceedFurther and some of the capabilities, but I think whatever you're using to have these things that allow you to optimize your ask. So when you are getting a donation, like for example, at ExceedFurther, you can have the ability to say, would you like to make this a recurring gift? It's already there. You can say, would you like to make this a tribute gift or in honor of, there's ways to be able to do that, because all of those things increase the amount someone will likely give.
And then there's also the ability to increase your yield by making sure that you have a cover the processing fees option within that ask. So that when you say that, again, you may assume people don't want, this is, I guess, another myth, that people don't want to cover the processing fees. You know, somewhere up in the 90% plus range, 85 to 90% plus range of donors will cover the processing fees if you ask them, or leave that checked if you have the box set up to do so, because they go back to what we said at the beginning, the reason that they give because they believe in your mission. Of course, they want the most to be able to flow towards your mission and to achieving what you need to do. So that's my little nugget on that piece. I'm going to throw out to you another question, which was, I just lost there because, okay. Do you have any stats on, wait, I'm sorry, where was this? What's the average retention time in years of the average donor? Or do you have any sort of insight on that?
I mean, again, on average, usually we anticipate somewhere between a 7 to 10, 5 to 10 year lifespan of a donor. Now, there are plenty of donors who have been supporting organizations for longer than that. But I would anticipate, I say, if you're going to sort of forecast, first of all, do your own analysis to see what's unique for your donor base. But generally what I'm seeing is somewhere between that 5 and 10 year range.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I think the other thing is that, you could have donors for life, right? Lifetime value. I guess it kind of depends on reasons individually for giving and what it means in terms of their life stage and where they're at, what's important. We all change and grow. And sometimes how well you've been able to put in place best strategies to keep them engaged. I'm putting up more questions here, another chance to stay connected with Barbara. In the meantime, I'm going to ask just probably field 1 or 2 more questions or myths. I've had people say, and they kind of answer their questions on their own if we don't get to them, Barbara. So I appreciate the community. But I've had odd reactions to thank you calls, which I like to do. Like, they were uncomfortable to be called. The donors appreciate a personal call. I'm going to share with you first off that someone had answered basically saying that I've had similar reactions, although they're sort of hesitant, like, maybe I'm going to be asking for another gift, but when they find that I'm calling to thank them, then they warm up, right? And that's the important thing. Don't always be calling with an ask. Call for other reasons, right? Any thoughts on that notion?
Yeah, I've heard that before. Again, not the prevailing trend for in conversations I've been having over the years, but I'm not surprised to hear it. What I will say though is that it's probably it is because those donors they're not used to it, right? They are, and they're not used to it, not just for your organization, but just generally. So, where you can make sure that you're, either it's print pieces that are going out that are just thank yous, or emails that are going out that are just thank yous, or text messages. I would say just keep doing it. And you might even start the conversation with, I'm not calling to ask you for a gift. I'm calling just to say thank you. So in fact, Giving Tuesday, as much as I was sort of poo-pooing it before, I have a friend who did a Thanks for Giving Tuesday campaign when she was at a college in New York, and they had a fantastic experience with that, and they had great results. So you might use giving days or these opportunities to do thankathons to your donors. It's great to get your board involved. It makes them feel, sort of part and connected with your donors, and it also gets your donors in the habit of hearing from you beyond just a solicitation.
Well, and this is great stuff. We've got, we've had a chance with a lot of questions. I'm going to close with one question, which is kind of a nice bonus to one of our participants who asked this question. Not really a myth, but, let's see, because we have Barbara on the line here, and I'm sure you have good thoughts on this. What's the best way to introduce a brand new nonprofit that no one knows yet in a small community? And I'm going to add the little parentheses, asking for a friend. So, right.
Yeah. So I would say lean on the networks of people who know you already. So your board or other volunteers or your staff, that, you think about it like a bullseye. It's those concentric circles of networks. I would start with them. I would absolutely lean heavily on social. So, where you can beef up your digital ads on Facebook, make sure you've got a really strong social media presence on Twitter and Insta. You might also think about LinkedIn. I've been seeing this a little bit more as a platform for promotion, within bounds though. So you don't want it to become, people use LinkedIn for a very different purpose. So you do want that. You want to use it to sort of make people aware of your organization. But in the early years, I would lean on the social platforms that you can, the digital marketing and advertising. And if you have the ability to do some list acquisition, that's going to be a cost and it's going to be over time, but that's another way to start to build your audience.
Well, I'm just going to add to, or just kind of, augment what you just shared. And so this is, we talked about peer-to-peer fundraising, right? So if you have that smaller circle right now, the biggest thing you can do, people love to hear from people who they know. And so everyone that either, maybe you have new board members, they have a personal professional network, supporters, volunteers, people that come to know of you want to share that. It's like finding a really good restaurant, right? You want to make sure everyone, well, unless you don't want the lines to get too long, but it's a little bit like that. So you want to share this out, and you want to make it easy for them to do. So you can create messages with peer-to-peer, and ExceedFurther allows it. I think others do. And you can be able to say, here it is. This is a little bit about our organization, and here's what I do on Saturdays, and why, it's so tough to get a hold of me, but it's really important to me. Or here's the great work we're doing, right? There's ways to do that. So we're gonna kind of close up with that. This is not the end of our conversation. We're with you for good. And again, there are opportunities if you want to drop a note in the chat box, you know how to reach us, or at arreva.com, at Windmill Hill Consulting. The info is all on the deck that you're going to be receiving, so you can follow up there. And I'm just going to go ahead and let you know, here's a little bit about Arreva and who we are. You can obviously read for yourself. I'm going to just say, I'm going to leave the final words to Barbara. I'm going to thank you from Arreva. We're so glad to have you on this session and to take time out of your day to share and care and be part of this. So thank you for joining us. We hope we can help you and if possible, work with you. And I want to give a big thank you to Barbara O'Reilly, who is just phenomenal, as all of you have shared. We've been working with her over several sessions, and we will continue to work with her. So if you want to check out some of our previous webinars, they're available at arreva.com. You can go to the events section and look at previous on-demand webinars. There's 2 of them that we did. We did one on, I'll remember, was on the 5 fundraising superpowers you need to succeed in essence. And the other one was really an interesting one called Why Your Board Doesn't Fundraise and How to Change That Now. So check those out, as well as our upcoming webinar that we'll be putting out officially here in the next couple of days. It is about the return of in-room auction events and how Boys and Girls Clubs of Coachella Valley raised over $1.2 million. So if that doesn't get you fired up as you were already about in-room auction events, this session certainly will. So Barbara, any final words, thank yous, last thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, first of all, I want to just echo your words of thanks to our attendees today. Thank you for carving out the time. You've got precious hours in the day, and so thank you for coming to learn with us. And I would just say, think about these myths, but think about the many other myths that you might be encountering, whether it's your own, the things that you might hold yourself that you've had perception about, or your CEOs or your boards might be, and think about all the ways that we can bust through those myths. What did you call it, David? Debunking the myths, because really sometimes we are holding our own selves back. And if we've learned anything over the last 2 years, is that we've got to constantly be thinking about how we can iterate and adapt. And so some of these myths, really, the ones, at least the highlights that we shared today, they were all debunked over the last 2 years. And so there are many, many more that we brought up and that you will encounter each and every day. So be sure to be thinking about how you can bust those myths to set yourselves up for even greater fundraising success.
Wonderful. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful week and stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.